Hello and welcome to Not Fake News. An article by Bridget Johnson out of PJ Media. New Trump orders float defining new crimes against law enforcement. Washington. President Trump issued a trio of law and order executive orders today, with one calling for potential new crime definitions and mandatory minimum sentences for violence against law enforcement. In one order establishes a task force on crime reduction and public safety without detail on the composition of the panel. The TAKS task force is supposed to exchange information and ideas among its members that will be useful in developing strategies to reduce crime, including, in particular, illegal immigration, drug trafficking, and violent crime. And based on that exchange of information and ideas, develop strategies to reduce crime. The panel is also charged with identify deficiencies in existing laws that may have made these laws less effective in reducing crime, to produce new legislation that would be enacted to improve public safety and reduce crime. The order states the task force must submit a report to the president within the year. Trump's executive order on preventing violence against federal, state, liberal, and local law enforcement offices directs Attorney General Jeff Sessions to develop a strategy for the department's use of existing federal laws to prosecute individuals who commit or attempt to commit crimes of violence against cops, and to advance adequate multi-jurisdiction prosecution efforts. After a review of existing laws, the order directs Sessions to make recommendations to the president for legislation to address the protection and safety of federal, state, tribal, and local law enforcement officers, including, if warranted, legislation defining new crimes of violence and establishing new mandatory minimum sentences for existing crimes of violence. Trump wants the Attorney General to coordinate with other federal agencies to develop an executive branch strategy and evaluate grant funding for law enforcement safety. The final executive order focuses on transitional criminal organizations, including drug cartels, gangs, and human smuggling operations, and calls for a comprehensive and decisive approach to dismantle these organization crime syndicates and restore safety for the American people. It directs federal law enforcement agencies to give a high priority and devote sufficient resources to efforts to identify, interdict, disrupt, and dismantle transitional criminal organizations and subsidiary organizations, including through the investigation, apprehension, and prosecution of members of such organizations, the extradition of members of such organizations to face justice in the United States, and, where appropriate, and to the extent permitted by law, the swift removal of from the United States of foreign nationals who are members of such organizations. The order calls for a greater cooperation among agencies to pursue and support additional efforts to prevent the operational success of a transitional criminal organization and subsidiary organizations within and beyond the United States, to include prosecution of ancillary criminal offenses, such as immigration fraud and visa fraud, and the seizure of implements of such organizations, of forfeiture and of the proceeds of their criminal activity. It forms a threat migration working group. If it forms a threat migration working group among the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, the Secretary of Homeland Security, and the Director of National Intelligence, to, among the other assessments and review duties, prevent foreign members of these organizations of their associates from obtaining entry into the United States and exploiting the United States immigration system. Now, you can read all that if you want. You basically got the gist. I have another story for you. Okay. Next story. Ted Cruz. Huffington Post slams of Ted Cruz accidentally prove him right. Aha! Look at his face. He's like, I'm right. Former president candidate Senator Ted Cruz knows how to ruffle the left's feathers. While blasting the Democrats for their claims that Attorney General Jeff Sessions is racist, Cruz pointed out that the claims of racism and actual racism have always been the bread and the butter of the American left. The bread and butter of the American left. Cruz cited the Dixiecrats, the Southern Democrats, who vehemently opposed desegregation as evidence of the Democratic Party's racist roots. Hilariously, the Huffington Post went on to defend on the defensive. However, historians say the KKK is founded and its founding had nothing to do with what Cruz called the modern-day Democratic Party. PolitiFact looked into the accusation when it came up through 2013 and called it false. The KKK was indeed made up of largely Democrats in the South after the Civil War, and most whites in the South were Democrats, but it was not started by the party, historians told the website. In addition, the modern-day Democratic and Republican parties are not what they were in the 19th century. The party lines of the 1860s to the 1870s are not the party lines of today. Carol Emberton, an association professor of history at the University of Buffalo, told PolitiFact, although the names stayed the same, the platforms of the two parties reversed each other. In the mid-20th century, due to a large part to white Dixiecrats' flight out of the Democratic Party and into the Republican Party after the passage of the Civil Rights Act in 1964. Nope, not even close, especially since the GOP voted for the Civil Rights Act of 1964 by a much larger majority than the Democrats did. Roughly 60% of the Democrats approved it, versus more than 80% of the Republicans. If the Civil Rights Act was such a catalyst, why would these racists switch to the party much more hostile to them? Start from there and actually do your homework. And Emberton's claim quickly gets exposed as inaccurate. The truth is a lot closer to this. Democrats started using the party switch smear after 1964. And while the Huffington Post claims that PolitiFact had already declared Cruz's allegations false, PolitiFact clearly did not do that. PolitiFact simply found that an accusation that the Democratic Party founded the Klan was indeed untrue. Well, Cruz did not make that claim. The PolitiFact clearly states that the founders of the Klan were indeed Democrats, and that claim is precisely what we heard from Cruz. You look at the most racist, you look at the Dixiecrats, this is what Cruz said, you look at the most racist and you look at the Dixiecrats, they were Democrats who imposed segregation, imposed the Jim Crow laws, who founded the Klan, Cruz said. The Klan was founded by a great many Democrats. Ted Cruz, Democrats founded the Ku Klux Klan. Now from PolitiFact. Michael Martinez, the author of a 2007 book, Carpenter Beggars, Cavalry and the KKK, told us as many angry Southern whites during the 1860s to the 70s were Democrats, and a smaller number of them joined the KKK. So there is some historic link between Democrats and the KKK, but Martinez said it's misleading to say that the hate group was started by the Democratic Party because it was more of a grassroots creation. Okay, and our final story is by Michael Walsh from PJ Media. Harry S. Truman, Trump's role model? Question mark. Harry Truman was a president, by the way, in 1952. Donald J. Trump, at Real Donald J. Trump. My daughter Ivanka has been treated so unfairly by Nordstrom. She is a great person, always pushing me to do the right thing. This is terrible. Naturally, the left went nuts. Some Trump critics immediately pounced on Trump's tweet, holding it up as further evidence that Trump is not respecting what should be a firewall between the White House and his sprawling business empire. Norm Eisen, a former Obama administration ethics czar, called the move outrageous on Twitter and said Nordstrom should consider suing under the California Unfair Competition Law, which forbids any unfair business act. Senator Bob Casey also replied, Trump's tweet by CCing the Office of Government Ethics. Casey's press secretary Jacqueline Rhodes said in an emailed statement that the senator feels like it's unethical and inappropriate for the president to lash out at a private company for refusing to enrich his family. Richard Painter, the former chief ethics lawyer in Bush administration, weighed in too, saying the tweet was absolutely unacceptable. That's 4 people. This is a misuse of the public use of public office for private gains, he said, and it's abuse of power because the office official message is clear. Nordstrom is a persona non grata with the administration. Chaser. After the music critic Paul Hume wrote a disparaging notice of first daughter Margaret Truman's vocal abilities in the Washington Compost, the President of the United States sat down and wrote the following letter. This is what Truman wrote in 52 or whatever. I've just seen your lousy review of Margaret's concert. I've come to the conclusion that you are an 8 ulcer man on 4 ulcer pay. I guess that was the thing back then. It seems to me that you are a frustrated old man who wishes he could have been successful. When you write such poppycock as was in the back section of the paper you work for, it shows conclusively that you are off the beam and at least 4 of your ulcers are at work. That's 1952 talk. Someday I hope to meet you. When that happens, you'll need a new nose? He said that? Someday I hope to meet you. When that happens, you'll need a new nose, a lot of beefsteak for those black eyes, and perhaps a supporter below. Pearl, a gutter snipe, is a gentleman alongside you. I hope you accept that statement as worse insult than a reflection of your ancestry. Ready for years of this, folks? Yeah, he said that. That was Truman. Anyway, comment below. Let us know what you think on any of those stories. Subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. And hit the bell next to the subscribe button so you'll be one of the first to get the new breaking videos that we're making each day. Give us a like, because I really appreciate that. Thank you. See you next time at Not Fake News.